so I'm just starting on a new project. This one's going to be a cover for this barbecue. I'm taking it from inside the cabin to outside the cabin to give me more room inside the tools. And the idea is to make a servery which will slide over this. The worktop area needs to be about here, so somehow it's got to be movable from the top when it's not in use, so it can cover the barbecue, and then move down to this level when it's being used as a server. One of the ongoing problems at the moment is getting hold of the timber that you want, and I had worked it out based on some tannalized exterior timber. The timber that they had at the merchants was, to be honest, not that brilliant, so I've gone for, rightly or wrongly, some untannalized timber which is slightly smaller dimensions. It'll make the whole thing lighter. It's going to be undercover, it's not actually going to get rained on, so I think if I preserve the timber it should be okay. It's been out overnight, that's all covered up here, so I've got to get on with getting it all treated now. Not taking it in the pub for a drink, but giving it a drink preservative. I haven't got any clear, or I haven't got enough clear wood preservative, but because this is going to be finished with the same sort of protector as the actual cabin's got, I'm just going to put this on. This is decking oil. This should do it. Okay, so the main frame timber has had 2 coats of decking oil, which is the closest I've got at the moment, so I'm going to leave all that to dry and then carry on later. I've used a spreadsheet to mark up a little cutting list and to check dimensions. This bit here helps me to work out the most economical use of cutting pieces from each timber. So we're going to start by cutting the top and bottom front rails. So that's all the frame pieces cut now. The next task is to decide which ones are going to be used where. A couple of them have got to be ripped down the middle because they'll be used as cladding supports. So, and I also need to mark on the rebates on the uprights as to where the cladding will fit into it. I need to do a rebate 20mm in, 20mm deep. I'm going to do that on the table saw, 20mm, 20mm, and then the tongue group cladding will fit into that. I'm setting up the table saw so that I can cut the rebates 20mm in. So I've got to set up the 20mm between the blade and the fence, and the blade to be 20mm high, and that's what I'm trying to set up now. Obviously I'll do a test cut before we cut the main parts. And look, I've reset the machine again. The blade was not quite upright. The little device on here for setting your blade upright, you can't lock it until you've locked the blade in place, and once you've locked the blade in place you can't lock the adjuster, which is very silly. So I've done one. I've now got to cut all the rebates on the uprights. So the timber that I'm using is, because it's got a round over edge, where that meets up with a straight edge, what I'm having to do is just slightly round over all the edges. So I've got a round over bit set up here, and that's what I'm going to do next. So I've trimmed all the edges that I think need trimming with a trim router, just to give them that little bit of a chamfer so it matches the other edge. Now I'm marking up where the pocket holes have to go, so that I can do all the pocket holing all in one go. Everything's dry now, so I'm going to sort things into the various panels, and then I'm going to start making up the frames using clamps. Probably use this as a bench to do that. So. With this bigger frame together, it's been a little bit more difficult. I've had to make a little clamp to take the weight of the frame while I work on down the other end and start to get some of the other legs in. I'm going to keep this glue in the shade because it's drying out very quickly. This is handy. Magnet on a stick. We drove lost screws. Just dropped it again, just to prove it works. And if we line these two ends up, it should be square. Well, of course, check that. Now when the two side frames attach to the front frame, there's going to be the opportunity for there to be a little bit of wobble until I braced it. So I'm just going to off camera go and cut a couple of 45s in here, and I'll make some cross braces for the corner, and that should clear it because the corners of the barbecue, there's nothing in those corners, so we should be fine. And that's going to be extra support for the cladding that goes across. What I've done off camera is to move the casters more towards the front because it was making it a little bit too top heavy, the risk of it tipping over. I fitted the rail for the shelf in both positions. Quick, because the sun is very hot at the moment. There's going to be a fixed serving shelf across here, so that you can put plates and stuff on there so people come and collect, which will come out to about here. This leaves a completely open space underneath for the barbecue to go in. Once you've pulled this away from the barbecue, this shelf will come out and go into the lower position. So I've set up the cross saw to cut my long tonguey grooves. I'm using the cabin as an end stop at the moment. There's a little bit of wobble in this table, so I've got to be a bit careful. Need to cut 11 of those, and then I will cut 22 of the shorter ones. So what I've done off camera is I've laid these up together, measured, because this is the same height as that, and then trimmed off the bottom edge of the board, so that I've got a clean edge to start with a fairly balanced piece at the top. Right, the bottom one obviously is going to have a screw either side, but these special screws that are designed specifically for doing that. So this first one will be seen. It's going to be not that noticeable really for what it is, doesn't really matter. So last cladding boards to go in. So what I'd done earlier was to measure so that I had a more or less equal distant piece at the top and the bottom. These two are going to have to fit in together, because if I put that in, I'm not going to be able to get the next one in. So what I could do is to measure the distance that, strip a board down and vanish around. But quite a lot's been done off camera today. Aidan just happened to come out and he gave me a hand to strip this piece down, because it's quite a long piece to get through a table saw just one person. So we stripped that down, we've edged it. This is going to sit on the top, and that's going to be there permanently. I've had to widen this side rail slightly to take the weight of the top shelf when it's in its temporary position. It's all been had a couple of coats of the same preservative that goes on the cabin so that it will blend in time. Itself tap themselves straight in. So the top's fixed and sanded down, wiped down with a damp cloth to remove any little bits. It's in the shade because it's very warm, and I think even in the shade I might have trouble keeping a wet edge going, but see what happens.